Good evening from the Durham Union Debate Chamber on the campus of Durham University, and welcome to the second debate of the 27th season of the Montgomery Cup. I'm Jordan Compton, Director of Forensics at the University of Central Missouri, and I am joined by the creator of the Montgomery Cup, retired Director of Forensics at UC-Mo, and now Professor Emeriti, Dr. Jack Rogers. Tonight, we'll hear a British parliamentary-style debate between the U.S. delegation of Lee College, Louisiana State University Shreveport, and the University of Central Missouri, and our host school, Durham University. So, Jack, we have an interesting motion on the table today.
Yeah.
We also have an info slide, so I am going to go ahead and read the info slide to our audience so they can have a little bit of an understanding of the context and the background in the world that this debate is going to be placed in. So, here we go. Here's the info slide that was presented to our debaters today, or this evening. Chronic Pinocchiitis is a condition that causes an individual's nose to horizontally grow by a millimeter every time they knowingly lie. Once it grows, it does not shrink back, and it is magically immune to rhinoplasty or any other attempt at artificial shrinkage. Long noses do not cause any significant health issues, and nose growth caused by chronic Pinocchiitis is not hereditary. And therefore, that leads us to the motion that we'll be hearing tonight. This House prefers a world where everyone has chronic Pinocchiitis. So, Dr. Rogers, where do we even begin?
Well, it's a creative way, to basically debate the idea of whether or not, deception or lies serve a purpose in our society, and I think there's good ground on both sides.
Sure.
I mean, I think as human beings, we lie every day.
Absolutely.
Sometimes out of malice and sometimes to be tactful. So it's just a fun kind of way of bringing up the idea of whether or not we want a society that's totally honest in every facet.
Sure.
So,
sure.
Should be a good debate.
So if we look at that info slide just a little bit closer, I think the key phrase there is knowingly lie.
Yeah.
Because we have to have some sort of a definition, some sort of a bright line, I guess, if we get into debate terms,
right,
of what exactly does constitute a lie. Are we talking about little white lies? Does this dress make me look fat? Type lies. So it's going to be really interesting to see.
Won't be debating that.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how opening government attempts to define
right,
and frame this debate versus also how the closing government will attempt to frame this debate as well. So that will be an interesting little wrinkle, I think, that will help us to set up this debate.
Yeah, it'd be a easy rabbit hole to get lost in if you start talking about, well, what if you say something and you think it's true, but it's not true? You're not really knowingly lying.
Sure.
Because I think we all say things we don't know are not true. And so I don't think that you can really bring that into a debate about, absolute honesty.
Sure.
Intent, I think, is important, But I'm sure we'll hear some arguments about what happens if you tell something you think, because I don't know whether they're going to be able to resist running down that rabbit hole.
Sure. So we are about 11, maybe 12 minutes into prep already. We're only doing 15 minutes of prep here tonight. It's been a long day for the U.S. delegation. We left St. Andrews, Scotland, about 9 a.m. this morning, arrived here in the Durham area a little bit before 2. And we made our way to Durham University by 3:30. We had a couple of exhibition debates, a couple of spars, as our friends here at Durham University like to refer to them, to get us ready for tonight's main event, the broadcast debate. I did not catch the sides and which sides we were on. Were you able to hear that after the coin flip?
Yeah, I think we have opening opposition and closing government.
Okay.
I believe that Gracie and Diego, Gracie's from UCM and Diego's from Lee College, are in the opening opposition. And I think closing government is Jordan
Guillo from Louisiana State University, Shreveport, and then also Cameron Tholey, also representing LSUS. Yeah. So we have the team from LSUS debating here in our second edition. We had the full team from UCM on the first night, and we'll have a full team from Lee College at our next debate whenever we head on down to London and debate Imperial College.
Right.
Okay, so we will be starting off by hearing from our friends here at Durham University. They'll get to kind of set the framework of the debate, kind of get us started there. So we'll look forward to hearing that. We had the opportunity to hear a few of these speakers already in the spars, and then we also had the opportunity to dine with them as well. So our thanks to our hosts here from Durham University for an excellent experience there. It was really nice to be able to sit and chat, and I know you had multiple conversations at the head of the table. Jack kind of sat at the head of the table, where he belongs, by the way.
Yes. There's only a chair left. Yeah, it was really fun. Durham, they have been so kind and so welcoming. And have embraced our kids and talked to them, and I think some fast friendships have been made. Down at the end of my table, my part of the table, you were there, and we had three, an economics major, theology, and law. What a group. Just eclectic and articulate.
And representing different countries as well. We had one from Spain and then India.
And the other one is
almost dual citizenship.
He lives, I guess, his parents live in Spain, but he's, I guess, British.
Yes.
But the young lady is definitely Spanish. And then the young man is, I think his dad is from India and his mom is from England.
I believe so. Yeah. Yes. Very interesting to talk to.
Yeah.
Just very worldly and scholarly, and every single one of these students that we've met are just so articulate, so sharp. Yeah. It's almost
and funny.
Yeah, and funny. Yeah, it's almost exhausting.
Yeah.
Talking to them, not in a bad way, but exhausting in a good way, because you have to focus so intently on what they're saying, because it's just so sharp.
Yeah, and their wit so dry,
so
and you're just like, wait a minute, did he? Oh, he did. He did. Yeah. So. Yeah.
So we are, I believe, getting very close.
Yeah.
To being ready. I believe. We have quite a few people here this evening to witness it. Yeah, so it's good to see so many young faces, presumably from Durham University, here to witness tonight's debate. I know they advertised this, and they definitely were looking forward to hosting us. And again, just immaculate hosts.
And they were very happy. Josh sent me the young man I've been going back and forth with since August, and he was like, well, normally we do our Friday night debates in black tie and tails. Did you travel with black? And I was like, no, about the best we can do is sort of business casual. And they were so excited they didn't have to wear it. Now the president of the union is in a black tie, and the lady that's going to call the debate tonight, she's wearing a robe. And there are a few people in the audience that are in black tie, but most of them are what they would consider casual, which our students would consider, going to church clothes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, different breed. So, but there seems to be a lot of electricity in the air.
Yeah.
I think they're excited to see what the U.S. team will do.
All right, so I believe they are getting ready to enter the room, so we will turn it over to them, and we will come back after the debate.
Yeah, that's First Government. So First Government's getting ready to walk out of the room.
I believe they have an entrance planned. I believe they're going to knock on the door.
Oh.
And I believe they will.
The pomp and circumstance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. A little fancier than what we're used to, but win in Durham.
Or Durham. I don't know.
Yes. When in England, do as the English.
Yeah. People waving at us.
Yes. Our adjudicators are getting set up at the front of the room and some fancy chairs as well. So.
Yeah. There they are. So we should probably turn it over to them, I guess. Yeah.
up to this point.
Thank you, Felix. Good evening. We are going to suspend place the normal formality this evening. We are delighted to be hosting raters from Louisiana State University, University of Central Missouri, and Lee College, Texas, for the annual Montgomery Cup. Format of tonight's debate will be slightly different, following the British parliamentary format, where there are 4 teams, 2 on each side. Speakers will be given 7 minutes, with a minute of protected time on each side, which will be indicated by the secretary ringing a bell. There will be 2 bells at 7 minutes and 3 at 7 minutes and 15 seconds, at which point the judges will stop listening. Points of information may only be given by the competitors, not the audience. Now, motion reads, this house prefers a world where everyone has chronic pinocchiosis. Now, as per the info side, chronic pinocchiosis is a condition that causes an individual's nose to horizontally grow by a millimetre every time they lie. Once it grows, it does not shrink back, and it is magically immune to rhinoplasty or any other attempt at artificial shrinkage. Long noses do not cause any significant health issues, and nose growth caused by chronic pinocchiosis is not hereditary. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister to open the case for the government.
Just going to start a timer. Why am I standing here today? Who knows? No, the reason why I'm standing here today because fundamentally a society with chronic pinocchiosis is a society in which you have greater accountability on a political level, a society in which legal cases are solved more effectively. This is good because obviously it means, the most vulnerable people in society get fucked less so because people are more truthful, shit like that. Okay, so let me engage in some crucial framing, talking about what exactly we're talking about with regards to what a life is and what kind of society we're operating in. After I do that, I will then bring up two main substantive points of, accountability in politics, solving of legal cases, and also bring a principled argument, showing that even if I don't manage to prove the political accountability and legal points, that the very notion of a society in which there's a great amount of truth is just like a fundamentally better society, like a priori. Okay, let me engage in a bit of framing then. What does a lie exactly entail? So I think we should very much focus on the part of the motion, like the info side, which focuses on intent. Because I think that when someone utters a lie knowingly, in their minds they know that what they're saying is like it's not representative of the reality. And I think that just upon people's intuitions, you kind of know when someone's lying, like they act differently, their tone of voice changes. And I think that this intent aspect of lying is crucially kind of what we're changing, is what really a lie amounts to. It means that, so if Josh tells me, do I look good today? And I say, you look interesting. Like that it would still count as a lie because the intent within my mind, I know what he's trying to say, and yet I'm obfuscating with my language. But the intent is very much there, and we think that in this society, this intent is something that can very much be measured. Second piece of framing is that this is a fundamentally different society, and that norms, people's expectations, people's kind of understandings, and the way in which the world operates is fundamentally different to our own. I really want to stress this. And the fundamental difference is that probably people's noses are larger because everyone will engage in a few lies, which means that no one can really run a case which saying, big nose is shit. We don't like this motion because who the hell wants a big nose? I've heard this being run before. I just want to preempt that. Secondly, also technology and our means for detecting nose growth will be enhanced, right? And we think that on an evolutionary matter, just our way to our central, the way in which we kind of register differences in people's like no sense, this is wild to say, will be very much enhanced because we would live in a society in which kind of the length of people's noses has so much more important than say in the one in which we do, because it determines whether you're a liar, it determines whether you're very much a truthful person or not. And we think that also like our ability to detect the intent behind what people say will be very much extended because of the reasons. Because of very similar reasons, because you have an actual means of determining, of figuring out whether someone has lied or not. So our like sensual and also like technological capabilities of detecting those like people's intent and nose length and stuff like that will be very much enhanced. I just want to stress it's a fundamentally different world. We're talking about social like norms and everything very much different. I'll take you later. So let me just get into my principal argument, which is basically so regardless of me proving the outcomes of getting a better political culture, a better legal system, this motion is a priori good. So let's talk about like why a lie is morally wrong. And I think it boils down to the fact that we are very much rational beings worthy of respect. And so the issue that comes with lying is that you're not providing a person with full access to information, right? And this is harmful because if you don't provide someone with full access to information, they might make the wrong decision. Right, so if I tell, so if a politician promises me, oh, okay, vote for me because we'll get this, or they provide me with some sort of statistic which will influence my votes, or on the very much personal level, right? If your boyfriend tells you, oh, I didn't cheat on you, that will influence the way in which you react with them. Right? You might believe them even though they're lying and stay with them, stay with a person who actively harms you. Right? So lying is harmful because it restricts people's access to information, restricts their ability to make a decision which is best for them. It has a tangible impact on their life. This is why principally lying is so wrong. And so why a priori this world is so much more of a better world because people have access to more information and so can make the decisions that have a significant impact on their life. It's very much related to the notion of agency. And so what this motion does, it maximises the amount of truth, maximises the amount of agency and the people's ability to make the right decision, which we think is good. No, I'll take you at 6. Actually, I'll take closing. I'll take closing, whoever that is.
When I comfort you by saying you fought a hard election recently, do you think it is good for my nose to grow and make you feel like shit, or do you think it is good for me to comfort my friend who I care about and love?
Yeah, Josh will respond to that, but but like a quick and basic way. Like we simply weigh on scale because of the two arguments I'm going to give you. We fundamentally change the political system. Right, so how do we do that? Okay, so under the status quo, you can very much lie to someone to get their vote. Or perhaps like if you're Bill Clinton, you can say, I did not have sex with that woman. Or you can find some sort of way of obfuscating, which is very much bad because the high expectations we hold politicians account to. Basically the same kind of reasoning I gave you for why lying is so wrong. Under this world, because it's a fundamentally different society, because it's a fundamentally different society, we think that generally people would be more truthful because they know in their minds that there exists a greater means of being found out. I don't think that people that act mostly for moral reasons, people act out of fear of consequences. And if they live in a society where it's normalized, just that in the back of their mind they realize, oh shit, if I lie, my nose will grow. Even if like people won't actually notice this millimeter, on the long term people will probably realize if your nose is growing, quite a big deal. And what we think this does, it acts as a personal accountability mechanism. So we get a more personal accountability. People themselves are less likely to lie, politicians themselves are less likely to those, but also we get kind of the external accountability measures because we think that technology will evolve. So it's like the media will be able to ask a politician a question, and if they lie, they'll be able to judge whether their nose grows. And so what this means is that we get a political culture in which there's more truth, in which there's less lies, and because of the reason I gave you, because of lying so hard, it means that less people kind of sold lies. They vote this way, they vote that way, based on lies. And we think it's particularly important, this is kind of just weighing on scale, because in terms of politics, the impact is huge, because these people, you vote for a party, and what their policies do, they influence not just your life, but so many other people. Because we fundamentally get a better, more truthful society in which people are able to act on full amount of information, don't actively get harmed by lies. So proud to propose. Thank you.
His final speech, and the leader of the opposition to the case for the opposition.
I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. This is from the Friends of Voltaire, and I think it is very powerful within this motion. We see there is a stigma around lying that the government is only enforcing. They are essentially saying that more truthful people should be valued more than people who are going to have bigger noses and therefore liars. We see this is only inviting discrimination and harm and an even bigger dividing force in the current divided society that we live in. We also see, within their case, they talk about the idea, essentially, that we kind of know when people are lying. That brings the question, what is the point? If we already know when people are lying, if we can already tell, what is this nose realistically going to change? Moreover, they talk about the idea, essentially, of norms. Essentially, everyone's nose is going to be larger. Therefore, it's going to be okay for people to have large noses. The issue is, once again, some people's noses will be larger than others. It will be essentially just inviting discrimination, inviting a caste system of sorts in which people who lie more are treated as filth, treated as nothing but liars, and simply unable to escape it. Because as the info slide says, it cannot change. So if you lie at a young age, don't know any better, and you get older and learn, you're still nothing but a liar in the government's eyes. That is the exact problem that I have with their case. Moreover, I talk about the idea, essentially, that we're not providing the people with full access of information. I would say, number one, sometimes it's just none of your business. You don't be knowing every single thing about my life, whether I'm going to go to the restroom in a few minutes. That's not something you really need to know. Moreover, we see that the closing brings up a great example in the POI, essentially saying that sometimes a lie is here to comfort. There can be good intentions behind a lie itself. So simply saying that a lie is moral or is immoral and only that is incorrect. With that, though, I do want to get into the substantial points within the opposition case. We see the first one is the idea of the threat to personal privacy and freedoms. We all deserve our own privacy. We all deserve to keep things to ourselves. But the moment in which we allow this visible, essentially, nose growth to happen, we see that we will no longer be able to keep things to ourselves. If someone asks if we're okay, and we just need a second, because something major has happened, our nose grows. And the person is going to keep on coming and keep on pushing into our, keep on pushing into our scenario, therefore not giving us the ability to have that right to privacy. We also see that if you buy the government's case, essentially saying that people will in fact stop lying, it is limiting people's freedoms because we no longer have the freedom to lie because then in fact we have that disincentive to lie. Your question.
Cool, so under this line of logic, what forces an individual to actually respond to a question that they don't feel like answering? Don't they have the freedom to just not say anything?
But then it becomes suspicious. Then people will push even more. It only hurts the issue. Additionally, I want to bring in my second substantial point, the idea of the harm to the human condition. We see that lying is hardwired into our brains. Back from way behind the dawn of humans, we saw that we deceived to avoid predators. We deceived to get mates. And in this day and age, we lie and we keep that tradition going. We lie to swoon people on dating apps, but realistically, the truth comes out eventually. So whenever we look at the idea of cultural impacts, let's think about Santa Claus. If you're going to tell your child that Santa Claus exists and your nose grows, we lose that aspect of culture because that growth stays on your nose and you're stuck with that for the rest of your life. You're just another liar, even though all you wanted to do was share a simple story with your child. Even if they bring up a drawing of a bumblebee and it's horrendous, it looks really, really bad, and you lie to them, they're going to see that you realistically have no faith in them. You're going to be hurting their feelings because, once again, you're going to be seeing that you're lying. We also have the hurt to debate itself, the very thing we're standing here and doing right now. I'm sure there have been motions that most people in this room have inherently disagreed with, but still stand up here and talked about. That brings an issue because whenever you're lying in debate, lying throughout the speeches you give, that growth is staying with you for the rest of your life, inviting discrimination for the rest of your life, decentivizing the very action we stand up here and doing. Realistically, we see a restructurization of the world, and that is problematic. We should not be reduced down to our nose size, reduced down to the amount of lies that we tell. We should be seen as simply just people that make mistakes. Our mistakes should not stick with us for the rest of our lives and haunt us until we die. That is the problem with the government's case, is they're advocating for a world in which these mistakes that we may we may have when we're just a child. We know children. Sometimes they do things just to mess with you for fun. They'll lie over and over and over again because they don't know any better. They don't know that it's going to hurt them in the long run because their prefrontal cortex is still developing, and that's right. So whenever we see the government's world, we see a world in which we live with the past consequences for our entire lives. A world in which we value people based on lies. And a world in which we lose the very culture that we adore in our everyday lives. There is nothing here that provides distinct enough benefit. They bring up the idea of a political world in which it's transparent. But at what cost are we giving this up? Whenever we lose the very aspect of humanity that we stand to gain, why does it realistically matter? We also want to look at the idea essentially that sometimes the truth is too hard to handle. Let's say there's a big governmental figure. They're asked, is there an alien in custody of said government? And they end up saying no, and their nose grows. That truth is something that is too hard for the public to handle. Yes.
Yes. If saying yes to the question of are you okay means that you're more likely to be provided with help, surely this is a better world.
Realistically though, sometimes you don't need solutions, you need time alone. And that is the very privacy that we need to value, not just give away at the cost of some mere truth. We also, once again, the truth is too big to handle at times. Your parent likely has a favorite. I'm sorry to break it to all of you, but it might not be you. In this world, we're seeing that this is only affirmed. We're seeing that, as I know, I'm unfortunately not the favorite. But I never want to hear that from my parents. I never want to see their nose grows as they tell me that. That is the world that I do not want to live in, the world that I stand firmly against. Once again, though we may disapprove of these lies, we may disapprove of what they say, but we must stand true and fight to the very death of everyone's right to say them. Thank you.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his final speech and look to the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the case for the government. That would be you, John. I'm in government.
Sorry. Do you need this?
Nope.
Whenever you're ready.
Panel, note that the lies told by the opposition are symmetric, i.e. everyone fucking tells them, everyone's noses grow, and therefore your relative understanding of how big everyone's noses are is out of this debate because everyone's noses are equally bigger because everyone lies to like their kids, everyone lies to like their partner or whatever. It's just a fact of life. I'm sorry, get over it, right? And what Sev tells you then is that like the positive material that we give you outweighs any kind of substantive material that they give you because A, we get greater accountability in politics, and B, we get like a better legal system that creates better outcomes, and C, on a more genuine like day-to-day level, if you don't buy those two outcomes, you just get greater interpersonal relations between people who are suffering in silence because you're more able to detect it. So what do we get out of, just in quick response to what we get out of the closing opposition, which is this idea that, oh, Shaz wants to comfort me because I lost that fucking election 2 days ago, right? Okay, those are tiny lies, right? If I'm crying to Shaz, and Shaz goes to me, there, Josh, you're my president, right? His nose grows by 1 millimetre, but note that none of you know that his nose is growing by 1 millimetre, right? You only detect it after a long period of time, where your nose gradually grows after you tell lots and lots of lies, and we fundamentally disagree with the opening opposition when they come up and tell you that, like, oh, but, like, this will create discrimination against people who have bigger noses. Good! I don't like people who lie, right? I think that we should discriminate against people who lie, because I think people who lie are just shitty people, and I think discrimination is a good thing in that scenario, right? What they also tell you is that, oh, what happens when kids lie? They grow up and they have big noses and boo-hoo, right? Note that all children lie, right? Your relative understanding of how big your nose is is then unchanged because everyone's, as said, everyone's noses grow at the same rate. Also, on their third substantive, which is this idea that everyone has like freedom to lie. Apparently, that's like essential to a human condition. That's like not proven. It's largely asserted. And also, I think it's a pretty wild thing to say they have a freedom to lie, considering the detrimental consequences that lying does have, that lying can have on people. I don't think that they've proven that, and I don't think that should be a right in and of itself. So, what does Sev tell you? Sev tells you that you get greater accountability in politics, i.e. the media is better able to scrutinise politicians because in the counterfactual world there is now technology where you can see people's noses grow in real time. Sounds fucking insane. It's probably going to happen, right? Why is this good and why does this win this debate in and of itself, right? 3 reasons. A, you get more honest politicians because politicians have to be blunt with the public, right? Yes, I know it's really difficult for like a politician to get up on stage and tell out how it is, right? Because honestly, this country has gone to shit, right? But I think it's better for the country to know that it's gone to shit rather than living with its head in the ground, right? People then become more informed about the issues facing the country. This creates a better political system with more meaningful accountability because a better informed public makes better informed decisions about the political leaders they elect and they make better informed government policy, and that has huge impacts. 2, you're more able to confront the issues facing the nation, right? Because issues are not like the issues that we need to confront in society aren't sexy, right? They aren't the sexy policies of like immigration, right? They're the sexy policies of like house building and like an aging population, right? Those need to be tackled. We think we get those issues best tackled on our side of the house because they're telling already hard truths that they don't have under their side of the house. Thirdly, you're more likely to get good and honest politicians because people with big noses are going to be sifted out at the local CLP level when you're being selected for a political party because, it's like, oh, you've got a big nose, you've lied in the past, we're not going to select you because we don't want lies standing for office, right? What is the impact of this? You get better policy. Why does that weigh over anything that they say? Because policy literally affects every single member in this room and every single member outside of this chamber, right? We say we weight on scale and we say we weight on depth of impact as well. Secondly, why do we get a better legal system, right? Because under the counterfactual, people are better able to detect when people lie, right? That's because the new technology that Seb talks about. This provides incontrovertible evidence of lying, right? 3 impacts of this in the legal system then. A, more crimes get solved because you can't lie, obviously you aren't meant to lie under oath, it always happens. This way you can't lie under oath, you're removing that freedom to lie, right? The public then becomes better protected and it creates an incentive to not commit crimes in the first place because you can't lie your way out of them, right? We say that has a huge impact on the public in general. And thirdly, on an interpersonal level, right? But before I go on an interpersonal, Shaz.
Okay, if Sav's analysis about accountability and being so afraid of being deemed a liar is true, then people from childhood will be so unwilling to tell lies. So it's more like that you tell harsh and cruel truths, then everyone has this baseline level of lying.
Children lie less under our side of the house. That's what I'm getting out of Shaz's POI. To be honest, guys, I kind of like a world where there are less lies being told, particularly by children, right? Why do we get a benefit on an interpersonal level, right? You now become aware of when your friends are lying to you. Note that this isn't like in real time. If I say to Louise, like, do you like my shirt? And she says no, right? And that's like, no, she says yes and she's actually lying, right? I can't tell if that's a lie because I can't see her nose grow in real time. What I can do is I can notice over time if she asks me that question over and over again and she keeps on lying, I can then detect it and then think, okay, Louise, stop lying to me, right? Why is this good, right? Also note that in the counterfactual world, you're likely to be able to become biologically adapted to be able to notice nose growth over time because there's a greater media focus on how big people's noses are. Why is this good? We think it's good to be able to tell when your friends are lying to you, particularly when it comes to their mental health, right? Because often people claim they're fine when they are not, right? People claim they're financially stable when they're not. People claim they're in a happy relationship when they're not. People claim that they don't have daddy issues when they definitely fucking do, right? So what we say is you can better detect when that happens over time, because if you keep asking your friend, are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you're not going to kill yourself after losing that election, Josh? Are you really, really sure, right? And you keep saying, no, I'm fine. Over time, you're better able to detect that lying, right? So what is the impact of that, right? Well, it fosters an open dialogue to be able to discuss those issues in real time because you can no longer hide from them, right? And why do we weigh on that, right? I think that our point about government policy weighs on scale and depth of impact. We think that our point on the criminal justice system also weighs on scale and depth of impact. And even, panel, if you don't buy any of those impacts, right, we weigh on the vulnerability of stakeholders, the vulnerability of people with serious mental health issues, being able to foster a more open dialogue because they can't run away from their problems anymore. They have no choice because their friends their friends are more able to hold them accountable for that. And for that reason, I'm incredibly proud to propose. Thank you.
Speech and look to the deputy leader of the opposition to continue the case for the opposition.
So starting with points that have been made by the government so far, let's take a look at what they're actually advocating for here. And that's maybe a little bit of honesty at the political level. But if you're weighing that in comparison to what the opposition is offering you, which is individuals' privacy, and oftentimes just overall fostering what is best for the individual, then you actually see that better upheld in the opposition world. Again, the only tangible benefit that they might give you is at the political level. Going down more of what the government kind of talks about, they talk about lies are morally wrong. Here's the thing, that's not always the case. Oftentimes individuals are lying for the sake of betterment of other people's feelings, or as I will get into whenever it comes to opposition points, for the sake of individuals' safety and also their well-being. Because here's the thing, when it comes out to what we're weighing in today's situation, we're seeing which world is able to value truth compared to safety. And what we can see is that the opposition side is actually going to be showing the better value of safety and how oftentimes we need to have more safety at the sacrifice of a little bit of truth. And again, going into another point that has been made by the government, they talk about how, yeah, people are going to actually grow to be honest. This is not inherently true. In a society in which people are constantly being forced to be honest, they're actually going to learn to be able to warp whatever it is that they're trying to explain to you into making it seem like the truth, but in reality it's not. And even then, what kind of value does truth have if the truth that we're getting is what we're forcing out of people? Truth will then in turn start to lose its value, and that's another harm that we see in the government world. And again, the only small benefit that they might give you is that in the world of politics. However, in the other benefits that they try to explain to you, even a little bit, such as your friend's mental health, or maybe the fact that you're trying to support other people, we can see that oftentimes, as my partner Diego says, it's none of your business. Oftentimes people want to be able to stick to what they have to themselves. People shouldn't be forced to tell every ounce of truth that they might have. Oftentimes people think that they need to lie in order for the sake of their own benefit. And if that's the case, so be it. There's no tangible benefit of barging the truth out of them. If at the end of the day, it's what's best for them. That out of the way, let's get into more opposition points as well. First and foremost, starting with the first point that the opposition has talked about, which is the threat to privacy and personal freedoms. First and foremost, we have the ability to speak and think as we wish. And if sometimes that's little white lies, again, so be it. What we can see is that at the end of the day, individuals have this ability to have this form of privacy to themselves. Some things they just want to keep, again, to themselves. Going into another point made by the opposition, talking about the harm to human condition and kind of expanding on how oftentimes people need to lie. Let's take a look at women. I'm a girl in speech and debate, and let me tell you, I get approached by strange men consistently. And sometimes I have to lie about things such as maybe my phone number or the fact that I have a round that I have to get to. Oftentimes in a daily society, women have to lie at the purpose of their safety. Women have to lie to strange men following them down the street, and when that comes down to it, that is what we need to support, is their safety as opposed to the truth. Not only that, if we look at moments in history, take a look at the Lavender Scare, where queer individuals had to lie about their sexuality in order to maintain their jobs, in order to maintain not getting shunned by society. In a world where we're valuing the truth over, for example, safety, okay, well now we're putting these marginalized communities in jeopardy. At what cost? A little bit of truth coming to the light? That's not what we should be prioritizing in today's situation. And then going into the third point that's going to be given by the opposition is, for example, AI and the lack of solvency for it. What we can see is that in a developing world of AI has the ability to morph the truth to make it seem like these things that may not be true are completely true. And what we can see is that the world of Pinocchioism actually doesn't solve issues that we see developing in the status quo. So even problems that they're wanting to solve maybe in the government world, they're not tangibly able to do. And then let's get into another point made by the opposition, which is, what is that perception of truth? I'll take that question.
All right, so when you talk about morphing the truth and
Sure.
how people can work around it, can you give us a singular example of what is something other than the truth?
I don't understand your question, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on. So again, going into this fourth point, talking about the perception of truth. What is truth at the end of the day? Because truth to me is vastly different from what might be the truth to you. And since we don't have this actual measurement of what truth even means to begin with, we're not adequately able to actually have a world of Pinocchioism because, well, no one actually knows what the truth is at the end of the day. That's just the fact of the matter. So even in the issues that they're wanting to solve, they're not tangibly able to do so. Again, even if you believe the fact that maybe it's okay if our politicians are forced to tell the truth, we as citizens also have the ability to learn the truth within ourselves. We don't need Pinocchioism in order to learn the truth. I would like to hope that as human beings we have critical thinking skills, although sometimes I'm a little incorrect in that manner. We also have the ability to use our brains, debunk misinformation, use our research that we have in order to actually debunk possible lies that we might be seeing. We don't need Pinocchioism to solve that issue. What we can see is that we actually have the ability to think for ourselves for once. So we don't need the government world. So even the one small benefit that they are trying to offer to you today, they can't even access, because guess what? We can do that on our own in the status quo. We can do research about things that politicians could be telling us. We can use our brains to actually make our own educated decisions. We don't need Pinocchioism to adequately do so, especially when it comes at the expense of safety, the fact that it doesn't solve to begin with, and just overall, the fact that the issues that they're wanting to fix aren't even able to be fixed in the government world to begin with. So what this already shows is that the government world is 1, not productive, 2, doesn't solve, but 3, compromises individual safety, such as women and marginalized communities. So because of these reasons, I must advocate for the fact that we oppose this motion. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Leader of the Opposition for their fine speech and look to the Member of Government to extend the case for the Government.
All right. I want to start off with one key point that I think really was kind of just glossed over that I think is the most important. It was brought up that, well, your parents lying to you or lying to children is inherently a bad thing. Well, and also, you might not be picked as the favorite child. Well, I can guarantee you that thankfully my parents never lied to me about being the favorite child because guess what? I'm an only child. So I'm both the favorite and least favorite. So what we see here is that even if the art that they told me make as a child was objectively not great, if they told me that they loved it, then that is their truth. That is the truth that actually matters. So when we look at what actually was stated in these last couple of speeches, or these last 4 speeches, what we've really seen is this back and forth on the idea of 1, what is truth? And 2, would something like Pinocchiosis be beneficial overall for discovering what this truth is? When we look to what the opening government side has stated, overall the points that they bring up are good and relevant, especially the ideas of accountability and particularly how this affects the political world. But the opening opposition has generally turned down the idea of what is important, 1, interpersonally, but then 2, overall to the world as a whole. So when we look at this culture of lying, what's actually important and not important, overall what we're seeing is that lying is something that is inherently detrimental. We see that it harms people directly, whether it's emotionally, physically, or informationally. I'll take the first of 2 questions.
So does every single lie that's ever told have an ill intent behind it?
Well, of course, I can't give you an exact thing on if every single lie is actually ill intent, but what I can tell you is that in general, lying, taking away the truth, deceiving someone is generally not viewed positively by the majority of people. So what we see is that in a world that we want people to be reliable, we want information to be reliable, and overall we want things to be better, we should be focusing on telling the truth. And something like Pinocchiosis, having a physical condition to show exactly when someone lies is going to be relevant. Now I'm going to get into the first of 2 substantial points on closing government side. The first one is going to be a more general idea of the world of truth. So I've been discussing this a little bit already, but we should be looking at how we can focus on what's important to the people. the opening government brilliantly brought up the idea of politically, yes, this helps keep politicians accountable because if someone has a long enough nose to not even get inside the door, you're probably not going to vote for them for your next president. So what we see is that overall, you're not going to want a politician that's going to lie like this. But secondly, we look at the very idea of who you choose to be your friends, who you choose to trust, who you choose to have around. You're not going to want someone who you know is going to lie to you constantly over and over again. I'll take that question later. I'll take a question later as well. So what we're seeing overall is this very idea that there's in no way you can create a world that is reliable if we already have this problem within the status quo. We have to show that there's something that needs to change, and what we're looking at overall is the very idea of making it where you have to tell the truth or you will have a physical condition in response. I'll take the second question.
Your world allows bigots and racists and just overall bad people to lend legitimacy to their claims by saying, I genuinely believe immigrants are evil and criminal.
Mm-hmm.
But their nose does not grow. They lend legitimacy by saying it is the truth when it is just their belief. Engage.
So the very idea of this is something that already exists within the status quo. That absolutely is something that can happen. You can absolutely get up and say the things that you want to say. That's already a problem. We look at racist problems in America as a whole. We see that in general across the world. You can't really have, I'll take a question later, we can't really have this idea of, well, you can just lie to get out of it and not have repercussions. What we need to have is some ability to put checks in place for these things. So we have to prioritize the best way to tell the truth while it also not being that detrimental. I'll take one more question.
So going off of what has just been asked of you, if that isn't something that's able to be solved, then what exactly is the government fixing in terms of politics?
So perfect, I'm glad you asked. The very idea here, what we're discussing is having an actual drawback to telling a lie, right? Currently within the status quo, if anything, lying is actually going to be somewhat beneficial to the wrong types of people. We want people who are actually going to prioritize the benefits to humanity as a whole, especially in places like politics. But in general, I personally don't want someone who's going to lie to me about how I look and how I dress for the day, how I generally approach things and matters of everyday life. So when we look at this idea of what is important, what is actually going to be beneficial for the world, if we're going to look at what this house should prefer people to have, then well, in this case, being able to tell who's telling the truth is most important. Getting into that second substantial point here, I'm going to bring back in this idea of mental health. The opening government kind of touched on this point, but I want to bring up a very important thing. So as we all know, I'm pretty certain the very idea of mental health is a more prevalent issue than ever in the current status quo. But what we see is that we still have issues catering to people like this. What we end up having are, especially people with things such as autism as an example, often have issues with things like social cues. So what we see is that they might not understand things unless you give them a direct and actual response, especially if you're trying to do something like lie to them or potentially deceive them, or even something as small as a white lie. So what we see is that something like this is going to be directly beneficial to them, because someone who has these issues and can't inherently always tell that this is a problem, what we see is that especially if they are consistent liars doing this all the time, well, once again, they won't be able to get through the door frame, much less be able to talk to you in the first place. So what we see when we tie everything back together here, when we look at what's important for closing government today, I want to bring up the main point, that if we're going to look at what this house should prefer, what is going to be beneficial, one, for humanity, two, in this case, particularly for politics, but three, as a whole, just how you interact with other people, in no way do we show that there is currently any issue with having this. All we see is that lying already exists, so we should be looking at trying to fix this. Why not bring in something like an unbiased third party to actively show us what is important to the world as a whole and what is actually truthful? Because currently within the status quo, as we've talked about, misinformation is a big issue. Well, good news. If you lie, it's going to be showing regardless of what you do. You can't get around this as a whole. No more questions for now. Overall, what we see, what we haven't seen actually from the opening government as a whole, from the opening opposition as a whole, is generally this idea of why this is a problem. They bring up the few key points of safety and things like that, but those are once again already problems within the status quo. Why not be able to actually solve some of these problems rather than keep them around in the same exact way? And then overall show us that the benefits, one, to mental health, two, to interpersonal relations, and three, overall, to politicians, which already are not trustworthy, and four, of course, to my loving parents who absolutely did not lie to me about my art and told me that it was very good. Well, we see that the benefits outweigh the negatives here and show that this House should definitely prefer this motion. Thank you.
I thank the member of Cabinet for that final speech, and the member of the opposition to extend the case for the opposition.
I think the premise that this debate has hinges on is truth isn't inherently good, but like why, right? Because I think the continuous thing that we've seen from government is that lying is always bad and condemning you to a life in which you lie is a good thing, even though as a kid you didn't really have the cognitive ability to understand your actions, understand the set consequences of the actions, and have to live with it for the rest of your life. On closing opposition, what we stand for is a life in which we have second chances. We give second chances to people, we have things like rehabilitation, and we think that a society in which we encourage discourse, we encourage people to not base each other off of what their nose looks like, is a good society in which society will advance, or rebuttals will be integrated. Okay, first thing, let's deal with OG first. So they give us, let's look at political accountability and legal accountability. People will buy into truth better because politicians tell truth. Like, that's not how echo chambers work. You choose to believe in certain truths because you have a vested interest in certain truths. You look at certain news channels because you come from those certain conservative news channels or like liberal news channels or whatever. And also what OG frames as like intent equals like lying. That's just like really problematic. Like I could be like as always my Shaz also engaged with that POI with CG that engaged with no response. If I was a genuine racist and I genuinely believe that certain ethnic minorities are like worse than others, and then I expressed the opinion and my nose didn't grow, that validates that opinion. And so in your world, you're going to cultivate a culture of like races where their opinions get validated by said nose. Okay, that's problematic for like very obvious reasons. And we just don't think normative opinions should be considered as truth. That was a lack of framing on OG's part. Okay, secondly, what we're going to gauge with OO. So they talk to you. To you about a few points. So first, you think people will be treated as liars. Sure, we concede, but like no reasons why. You kind of have to like explain. Welcome to BP. Okay, so we're going to give you 3 structural reasons why, as to people, the perception of people in this society is about the worst thing that happens. So, okay, let's just imagine a society where like we're already judging on like morally arbitrary characteristics, right? So for example, my skin color, how I look, these are already set things in which people judge me on. Having a nose that is much more bigger than others will tell people when you engage with people at first look, you're probably a morally bad character and probably shouldn't talk to you. This on an individual level probably encourages like things like depression and like anxiety, right? Like, why doesn't that person like me? It's definitely because of how I look and not my personality. Secondly, we also think just on a macro level, right? Let's actually engage with what this motion looks like and what this motion actually impacts the most. We talk about disadvantaged kids and people who don't necessarily come from good backgrounds who want to fake it until they make it, right? So we're looking at things like a kid going in school. He doesn't want to tell about his family situation because he's really scared of people judging him. So he lies and says, yeah, my family's good, my parents are not divorced, I'm living a happy life. His nose grows and his confidence like plummets, right? So I think this encourages a cycle in which people who would lie for genuine reasons as to like boosting confidence and like these sort of things generate a society where people just spiral into depression and they can't get out of it and they can't actually like reverse these changes, right? So we think that this is most likely going to accumulate in things like being a targeted like Pinocchioism, right? So we think this encourages things like more racism against racial minorities who suffer as the most disadvantaged group in America. And secondly, right, we also just think on an individual level, this discourages you from trying new things. For example, when everyone starts out a new thing, they quite shit it, right? And then like you are like objectively shit at a new thing when you start it. Like no one's gonna come and tell you, yeah, you're the greatest person who ever lived to do debate. But like someone at some point lied to me and told me, I was like, yeah, you're good at debate, you'll go far. That's why I'm standing here to you guys, right? And Josh and Seth as well. So I don't know why you're offside. So yeah, and I'm just like on point, right? I don't think like lying is like they never actually prove to you like truth is inherently good, right? I think lying is like very valid in a lot of instances. For example, in a lot of instances where revolutions happen, you had to actually lie into the government in order to overthrow them. This looks like instances of Martin Luther King, where he lied to the U.S. government in order to be able to overthrow them. I think that Gov had taken a very hard stance where they have to prove lying is objectively bad, and also building on that, like engaging with like the legal point that OG brought upon. Like if I suffered from like a sexual harassment claim and I didn't want anyone else to know about it, and they asked me if I'm okay, and I say yeah I am, and then that is active lying, but that is also incredibly detrimental to the individual's self-perception, and also just like in the future like doesn't give second chances. Okay, second chances. Why is this the most important thing in this debate? We think this is akin to coming out of a criminal conviction and not being able to reintegrate back into society. What that looks like is, in the current status quo, what happens is you get what happens is you already have a label on you as a criminal, and therefore you can never properly integrate back in society. We think this is what this motion is promoting, because lying is intrinsically seen as bad in society, as a moral wrong. Note that this is not an objective criteria, this is a subjective criteria. So that means people will already have preemptively, opinions of you before you go. Why is this harmful? One, on an individual level, you're just never going to be able to break out the cycle of depression, cycle that this Pinocchio's and whatever puts you in, right? And secondly, we think just society will regress as a result. Why? Because things like regulation, the things that I talked about, things that are lying, where lying is necessary for the individual to benefit from it, and where lying is necessary for the society to benefit from it. We have no engagement whatsoever. And secondly, let's engage with the entire premise along where they say, but this makes society better and it makes people tell more truth. No, we don't think that's true, right? Literally, as Shah said about the racism point, it makes people more manipulative, they become more technical when they speak, they watch their words, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily, actually I'll take yes now.
Yes. So we're not saying that lying is universally good, but that more often than not it is so, because it's important for people to have access to information that directly affects them. Like your boyfriend cheating on you, Boris Johnson lying about the amount of money.
Okay. Yeah, and I literally can give you 10 counter arguments. You're not giving me a principle, you're just giving me examples. And we literally also give to you a society where people will probably off themselves because of the mental health of things that you encourage, instead of actually promoting hope. Things like Santa is real, right? Okay, that's not a great example. But things as if you have hope, you become a greater debater, you'll become world leader in the future, right? We think these are things that actually motivate people to become better people and just become better individuals, and on a macro scale that also encourages society. Okay, lastly, why do we think that this entire premise along Gov was untrue and really harmful? No, that we, I'll just engage on the kids argument, right? Truth is never inherent good, and if you consent to something not knowing the consequence of it, we think as a kid, you just, even at the worst practical stage, you consent to facial altercation that you never consented to, you never knew to do the consequences of. So we think that's incredibly harmful. So why is mental health and second chance the most important thing in this debate? We give individuals a chance to redeem themselves. We're telling them this is not the all or end all, and we actually encourage a society. Thank you.
I thank the member of the opposition for speech and look to the government whip to conclude the case for the government as a whole.
Now, I can be up here, I can be honest with all of you. I am the youngest of three, and I've been told to my face on many accounts, I am not the favorite child. It's very clear. But the thing is, and the main thesis of what you're going to hear in this speech, because you hear a lot of these small lies. You hear of these building lies that help people progress in the future. But the thing is, it's those constructive criticisms. It's those tiny things that are fixed throughout your life that actually help you to grow and not be an absolute jackass of a human. So, getting into that, starting with some refutation of what you just heard. We hear specifically the main idea of this idea of second chances. I pull you to the world we see today. There are crimes upon crimes that you are labeled for, that you are judged for, that carry with you throughout the entirety of your life. This is a millimeter that is added to your nose length. It takes 25 millimeters to make an inch for my American friends, so it is nowhere near as big as current issues that follow you within crime, so don't let them blow this up and make it seem like it's the biggest thing in this entire debate, because it's simply not. It's just silly. Then, going in, you also hear specifically bringing up this example about kids. I tie you back to the motion and what you heard first. You have to know you are lying. And if we are going to have this idea of that kids do not have the ability to process what is and is not a lie, then that completely negates this argument, because their nose does not in fact lie based upon how this has been framed and defined. But then as well, going in to parents, and this idea that parents, your art sucks. There's a big difference between trying to destroy your kid's heart and feelings and constructive criticism. Because at that point, going back to the example of a picture, I'm not a Picasso myself, But instead of saying, Cam, this is the worst thing that you've ever drawn, and I absolutely hate it, that's going to crush me. It's like, listen, buddy, we have areas to improve on. It's not your best. There is nothing saying you have to crush the dreams of anyone or make the worst lie possible or the most harshful truth possible. Once again, this is a narrative that we see the other side of the bench is trying to manipulate, and it should not stand for a singular second. Look to the facts. Look to what we actually see in modern day. It's nothing here. This is just out of the mind.
And in that time, then we will come back and I will give an oral adjudication, which is what we usually have after a British parliamentary round, in which we will deliver the result and we will also have like a small amount of feedback justifying the goal, etc. And once that 10 to 15 minute session is done with the oral adjudication, then the meeting can adjourn. Sorry, William.
No,
it's just, yeah. That's how
Thank you very much. To the roll speeches.
Right, so we'll do some floor speeches. Okay, would anyone like to do floor speeches? Floor speeches?
Well, to quote the announcer from Ted Lasso, apologies for the fruity language.
Wow.
We are certainly in the country of the fictionalized Roy Kent.
Yes.
Certainly some language that we are not used to from our debates in the United States. But hey, when in England, do as the English, I guess. And we certainly we certainly got a little bit of humor out of that, I believe.
Yeah, they're doing floor speeches.
So we should probably just continue, right? Or should we pass it off?
We should just continue.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, so in the background we have floor speeches going on. That means that members of the audience are coming up and kind of responding to what we heard earlier in the debate. And I know this one gentleman in particular has had many beverages, I believe, over the debate. So we're just going to continue going. So Jack, what do you think?
I think it was a good debate. I think that there were some good points on both sides. I think both sides kind of avoided, to a certain extent, direct clash with one another. I don't know that either side ever really was able to establish directly what they meant in terms of impacts. So,
yeah. So one of the big differences, I think, between this debate that we saw here tonight and the first debate that we saw in Edinburgh was the point of informations, the questions.
Yeah.
Interesting strategy, I think, from our friends from Durham. Kind of walk us through what you saw there and kind of what you interpreted as far as their strategy of which questions they would take from which side and from which bench.
Well, I
which
think,
side of the bench,
yeah,
I
mean, I think it's natural for the Durham debaters to recognize questions from other Durham debaters. I noticed that opening government would not take any of Gracie's questions, and so turnabout fair play, she got up, she took questions from closing government, but would not take a question from opening government. So there's a strategy in allowing people to ask you questions and who asks you questions, when they ask you questions, and then being able to deal with what the content of that question. I thought the opposition whip, they asked him a question, and he said, that he wouldn't suggest taking on that burden in a speech. He's like, that's a poor way to try to win this thing in a POI. And it is a burden because basically what our side was asking was, is there this absolutist standard that, is always good? And it's, I don't think you want to argue an absolute standard.
Right, and he did that. He kind of deflected in a way where he did not have to answer the actual question.
It didn't answer the actual question.
Told closing government, that's a big burden to put on yourself, especially not having another speech at the end.
Yeah.
So shifted the burden of the answer back on to closing government, which I thought was a really interesting. We both kind of looked at each other and went, not too shabby there.
Yeah,
all right, excellent. Well, as we look towards the style, I guess, of the different debaters, starting with the Prime Minister, I had the opportunity to sit next to, I believe Sevi is his name, short for Severino. Sevi is actually from Spain. Gibraltar, I believe, is what he told us. So a very interesting style, I thought, as far as the delivery. Tried to use a little bit of humor. Talk to us a little bit about the role that humor plays here in British parliamentary debate.
They do use quite a bit of humor, and sometimes it's self-deprecating to make a point. Sometimes it's humor that takes a gentle jab at the other side. But they do use humor quite a bit more than we do on the American circuit. Their style tends to be a little bit more bombastic, a little bit more rhetorical. Our style seems to be, at least in opening opposition, quieter, more logical, more methodical. Although closing government, which is a U.S. team, they got into the spirit of things and were quite animated. But yeah, their style here is a little bit different than ours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both of the members of the opening government kind of shared a similar delivery, a similar passion, I believe. And then we get into the opening opposition, as you mentioned. Yeah, they lay it out. They're cool. They're level-headed. They use more logic. I think they use more argumentation. Than what is generally used here in British parliamentary.
Well, to a certain extent, they're more detailed, I think, in some things.
Sure. And then closing government clearly got into it. Both Jordan and Cam have been really fun to get to know on this trip, and Cam is just such a dynamic speaker. And he takes it slow. He chews his words. And chooses his words, both. Choose and chooses. Yes, to a point to where he just brings out the passion in his point as well. I thought he did a pretty good job of bringing their benches into a close. So other things that maybe we saw during the debate that might need to be explained to our audience who is not used to British parliamentary, anything that really comes to mind for you?
They just have a different rhetorical style. They have a tendency to make a main argument, and then they like to give you three reasons, A, B, C, whereas our argumentation tends to be more to the point, less substructure to a certain extent. And that's the comment that the young lady made, welcome to BP. You didn't do it the way we normally do it, which is fine. It's, we're here to learn. It's a different style. Certainly a lot to be said for the way that they do things.
So I actually wrote that down, welcome to BP. Yet I think whenever we look towards their case, not a ton of new arguments, not a ton of new information, a lot of parroting, I thought, of what opening opposition laid out there. A lot of the examples were even the same, about talking about kids, talking about Santa Claus even. Any thoughts there as far as their strategy with closing opposition?
Well, I thought that they extended by using, examples. I think a lot of the basic structure of case, and I think a lot of the examples, as you say, were already there from opening opposition. You know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
If you were ranking this,
Oh boy.
I know that's always a tough question, and it's one that I don't even know that I can answer. Any guesses as to what some of maybe the main conversations that are happening right now in the hallway with the adjudicators? Any guesses as to which arguments you think are maybe at a sticking point, or maybe the top arguments that they're making their decision on?
It's hard to say. Personally, I feel it's an opposition bench. You know, I think the opposition pointed out enough dangers to a society that can only tell the truth. And I think that there were some major contradictions, and I hope they talk about that. You know, on the one hand, they say, well, we'll get better politicians, we'll get better trials because there'll be truth and honesty. But then they turn right around and say, well, it takes a whole lot of lies to get a bigger nose. And since everybody lies, then everybody's going to have a bigger nose. So if everybody lies and everybody has a bigger nose, how do you tell, where do you get the benefits?
Yeah.
You know, how do you know, if it only grows a millimeter and they say, oh, you won't tell from just one, well then what about a court?
Yeah, sure.
You know, how many times do I have to say whatever under oath for my nose to grow enough that the jury, can figure out that I'm a liar?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think there's a contradiction in the whole idea of the nose growing and how it grows and when it grows. But I think there are more implications on the opposing side that, for things like, particularly for women or minorities or people that have mental health issues or socioeconomic issues who don't want to tell the truth, or it's dangerous for them to tell the truth.
Right.
I think that kind of, to me, outweighs the concept of maybe being able to figure out whether a politician is lying. I think we already know that.
Yeah.
Are their lips moving?
Yeah.
They're probably lying. Yeah, they're politicians. So, and the judicial system's not perfect, but it does work pretty well. So I don't know that I would risk the health and safety of minorities and other people that might be taken advantage of to figure out that a politician's lying.
Yeah, and you mentioned two very key words there, health and safety.
Yeah.
And if we go back and if you were flowing at home, if you look towards the first few mentions of health and safety, well, that's going to be opening opposition.
Yeah, I if I had to guess, I think they'd probably give the one to closing opposition, simply because their style meets the style that they're used to seeing more. I think opening opposition, Gracie and Diego, I think they have a good shot at the 2. I think closing government would probably get them a 3, and I think opening government would probably get a 4, because I just don't think they outline and frame the debate in a way that is easy to engage with. I think it's a bit fantastical to a certain extent. But who knows what they'll do?
Yeah, sure.
They always surprise me.
And I think that's kind of where those points of information come into play there as well, because opening government had maybe 1, possibly 2 questions that they were able to ask after they were done with the top half of the debate.
Yeah, they didn't do a real good job of keeping themselves in the debate. And they didn't take many questions, and that's not something that usually gets rewarded in a British parliamentary debate.
Right. And so they really set the tone for how points of information were going to be addressed. And by not taking any points from OO, but taking points from OG, then that kind of set the tone. And, if you're not being allowed to answer questions,
So-
you're not going to take questions from them.
We got the judges coming back in, and
Yep,
so
so
we
we're
will
going to cut
cut
away.
to them.
Okay, so how it usually goes in BP, and that's how we're going to be doing it today. Sorry, goodness. Is I'm going to start off by giving you a call. After the call, we're going to go into some general feedback, which will then trace the round as it happened in our minds, and then we'll go on into explaining the nitty-gritties in the call. So we'll go opening house, closing house, then long diagonal, short diagonal, as to why, who took it over who. So let's begin with the call. I think we're gonna. I think we came to a unanimous decision in the end. There was a lot of discussion. It was very close between everybody, and there was a lot of discussions between second and third, first and second, and third and fourth. So you should all be very proud of yourself. But the ultimate decision we went with is in first side closing opposition, in second side opening opposition, in third closing government, and fourth opening government. Right. So. Congratulations to the team. It was very close, and we'll go on to how it was close and why it was close over the next 10 minutes. So, I think let's start off this general comment section with a question. What is a lie? And I think in opening government, the first thing I wanted to hear is when will my nose grow? In a word, what is a lie? We don't really understand what this idea of when my nose is growing is going to happen. Because what we do here in their framing, and it is a bit of an extensive framing, we spend a lot of time on it, is that lying is somewhat judged by intent. This seems to be a bad frame to take, which I think then OO does very well to point out why it's bad, and I think CG actually does a better job than OO to point out why it's bad, which is a bit rough for you. But this idea that intent is what is determining your nose growth here is something that we as a panel felt was quite contentious, right? Because then we are left to question what the next things we get are, right? Which is when you lie, you deny information, right? That if you are maximizing truth, we are basically maximizing everybody's ability to access the correct and amount of information. So we talk about scale of impact and depth of impact over there, right? What we don't get over there then is what does this access to information do? We seem to understand that the idea that what this access to information is going to do is a couple of things. And you push in your DPM more than your PM what these things are. The first is through politics. The second is through the legal system. And the third is interpersonal relations. And I think this theme sort of goes on through side government, through the right? So what we see this access to, how this access to info improves government, improves politicians and government, either one, is the idea that, hey, a more informed public means that we're going to have better government because they're more likely going to choose the right people to govern, right? You're also more likely to talk about like the more important issues. We're not exactly sure why these issues are more important or not, but more important issues such as instead of focusing on big ticket items like immigration, we're going to focus on housing. And then lastly, more honest politicians who get selected because parties are unlikely to give tickets to people with bigger noses. They're going to look for the person with the smallest nose and put them on top and say they're the most honest. I'm left questioning what a more honest politician will look like and why a more honest politician is necessarily good. Because if intent is determining what your like nose growth situation is looking like, then why can't I, just as everybody from opposition said, just have the intent to be actually racist, right? Like, why don't I intend to just genuinely be a bad person and believe in those bad things, right? So then your idea of the mechanism of like your nose growing is simply not going to function. right? Because honestly then, the people who don't believe in these actual racist rhetorics and are just doing it to be like, I guess, well, like a Jordan Peterson or somebody who's just doing it for shock value, I guess you weed those guys out. But like the people who are actual pieces of shit, like the actual people we should be weeding out, are most likely going to slip under the radar and like go as like honesty. And I think what then makes this idea worse is good CO, but you'll bring CO into the debate later, right? The better legal system you can't lie in court. I like, yeah, fair enough, I guess, fair enough. I accept that. You never really pushed it as to why like not lying in court is going to be better. I guess in a nebulous term, I guess that's it is an impact that we're willing to give you. That okay, this impact exists. You won't be able to lie in court. There'll be some physical metric to check it. Never really take it further than that. You never really tell me why like that's going to necessarily be good. Why that's going to impact people on the ground. I do believe there is some good in it though intuitively, and I think that intuitive push just like sit well with us. I think we all like some sort of no trained believe it. So yeah. And then interpersonal relations. And this is the one that confused me the most. Right? So that the idea that hey, if I'm going through a shit time, I'm forced to say, okay, like what's up? I have to say that I need help. Right? You don't tell me why you're gonna get this help necessarily. You don't tell me why you're not going to be shamed for saying that you are in pain and you need help. You don't tell me why that this meant that the whole stigma around asking for mental health help is going to change. You just say we're forced to say it. And in fact, bringing in OO now, I think OO flips that very well, and CO then does it. Yes, Shaz, stop pointing on yourself. You've won the debate already, bro.
That's not
I can't believe you're doing this after you
That's not what I'm saying, man. I'm saying hurry up.
So, I think it's completely flipped on its head and said you're more likely going to be pointed out and stigmatized by being forced to tell. So, now bringing OO into the debate. I think OO is in an interesting position in this debate, right? I think OO has the right ideas, but we never really understand why their ideas matter. What I'm left with from OO across both speeches is that we have this sort of nebulous right to privacy, and what the change that government is proposing to do to the world, it attacks that nebulous right to privacy. Everybody lies to be able to be private, and I think what we then get is that this ability to be private is removed. What we don't get is why necessarily this right to privacy is so important. We get this idea that the truth is too big to handle sometimes, and I think that's a direct quote, which then is an interesting concept of, hey, it's almost like Lovecraft of, hey, do you really want to see the face of Cthulhu and the fear of unknowns, which is what I thought of it more as, which is interesting, but what I need to hear is an explanation on why this nebulous right to privacy is more important than me getting some sort of benefit to the court system and some sort of benefit to politicians, right? I think what you do very well though is cast a lot of doubt on OG's case. I think you do very well in responding to a lot of what OG says, and I think you force OG then in DPM, especially from your LO then to DPM, to sort of take the hardline stance and back their framing, because you kind of pushed them into a corner by asking them those questions. And I think Josh then has to go back onto this intent framing, which then screws his case even further. So I think you do a very good job in that, but what I don't think you do a good job of is telling me why you win the debate. I think you do a very good job of telling me why OG doesn't, which is unfortunate for OG, but I think less unfortunate for you. Bringing CG into this debate. I think if CG and OG were one team, I think you guys would have won the debate. I think a lot of what member of government does could in some cases count as knifing. So what knifing is basically taking your own opening and telling them that you've messed up and you actually shouldn't win the debate, here's why we should win the debate. So it isn't exactly telling your opening why we're better than you, but rather like taking your opening out of the debate and making sure they lose to both the oppositions as well. So, but The thing is, I think I like your framing, so I'll allow it. I like it a lot. So I think it was exactly what, because I had all the same questions that I think Jordan came up here and answered so succinctly, right? And I do have to credit them for that. I think what we get from MOG specifically and CG as a whole is this: we move away from this intent-based analysis of lying, and we actually get this very interesting idea of a neutral third-party observer. I'm not sure what this neutral third-party observer is. I can only assume it's some sort of God character. So if it is like a god, or it's like, let's say, I don't know, whoever it is, it could be the Morgan Freeman in the sky or whatever it is. This God character will say, this is the truth and this is a lie and there's nothing in between, and you're done. If you lie in my eyes, you're done, and if you don't lie in my eyes, you're done. So then we almost get this sort of black and white view of the world where there does exist a moral absolute truth, which is something that I think opening government took very great pains to avoid. But in fact, I think it's actually beneficial. However much I don't agree with it in reality, it is very beneficial in this frame. Because suddenly then, you understand why the nose growing is such an important mechanism, because it allows the permanence of actually lying to be seen as a detriment. Because right now, the problem I see with the world is that yes, there exists an objective truth, but nobody has a penalty to actually lying, and therefore if a penalty is observed, you're likely going to get access to these impacts. So then you then go on to give me the same impacts OG does. This is a very risky move, right? Because if your framing hadn't worked, if your reframing hadn't worked, and you gave me those same impacts, it would have resulted in an immediate fourth for you, because I can't credit any of those impacts because OG would have done it anyways. Because remember, at the end of OG, especially like at the end of opening, OG still has some level of impact that I believe, especially surrounding areas that you guys pushed again, and which were very similar, right? But good, like your good luck, your good fortune, well done, that your reframing did work, because I think OG was forced again in DPM to take that hardline stance and really double up on that framing, and then you come here and like completely change it. Fair enough. And I think you push that again in WIP, which just drives it home again. Fair enough. What I don't get from you again is I'm still not convinced on your impact. I understand it a bit better, but I don't understand why it's changed. So I'm more convinced, yes, fair enough, that we might get better politicians, more honest politicians. No, not better politicians, more honest politicians. Right? You don't tell me why politicians adhering to this moral objective truth is going to be better for the people. Because ultimately, what do politicians do? Is it the politician's job to just be truthful, or is it actually do something? Right? Because I can be truthful and just come up here, yeah guys, I'm sorry, we're in a shit situation, like it's screwed, like there's nothing we can do about it, so anyways, let's move on with life. Right? That's going to be, like, I'm a truthful politician, right? I'm a shit politician because I'm not working for the people, right? This is not really challenged, and I think this bringing in CEO later, it'll probably Chaz will probably challenge it. But I think there's still an amount of impact left. Again, I'm just not convinced as to why these impact. Bringing in CEO finally, I think CEO does the one thing I was looking for in this debate, which is actually give me a reason as to why their side should be winning the debate. I'm pretty convinced at the end of the debate that CEO has the impact that I like the most over here, which is specifically that minorities and marginalized groups need some sort of ability to lie to fit in. So what you're presenting them with in your situation, or in the situation outside government, is this where they have to choose between lying to fit in a little bit better, to get friends and sort of try to move up in the world, or a situation in which they don't lie and don't fit in anyways. If they lie and try to fit in, they're going to be stigmatized later down the line because they're going to be exposed by the size of their nose. Because even if I don't buy into the fact that this growth is not much, so you'll be able to tell an amount of lies in your life. The amount of lies you tell is very limited, in my opinion, because everybody knows that an inch is a large amount, right? So like if you see a nose growing an inch, like at least in my opinion, that you know, I think so. Right? You're going to see that inch is going to make a difference. I'll be sure. So I'm left then wondering, like, is this idea of you're forcing these people to choose. And I think that is a great, I think that's exactly the idea that I was questioning. I think Shaz does a great job in Wit to point out, and I think Angela actually does the good job for the argument, and Shaz does a great job in actually taking down the entire Gov case, because whatever doubt that I had on the fact that you guys had impacts, I think Shaz did a good job in taking it down. And yeah, I really like Angela's argument. I think it was pretty sound. I think the one thing is I'm not entirely sure why these guys need to fit in. I understand that there is some sort of benefit to be able to be good and fit in and stuff like that. I'm still left wondering, why fitting in particularly is what they need. I understand the fake it till you make it thing, but I don't quite understand how faking it till you're making it is going to be extremely good for them. I just understand that there exists some amount of good, but you're lucky in this debate that then that is never questioned, that the reason for that good is never questioned, the scale and depth of that good is never questioned. So even though I'm left at the end thinking it's a rather shallow impact, it is an impact that I'm led to believe that is going to win you this debate. And I think your negative material also, again, does stands you in good stead of a lot of the stuff on lying with intent and is a lie always bad? Do we need lying? I think is all fitting. I think the ultimate question we had to decide on was, we understand that lying is sometimes bad, but when you remove lying from the world, and the people that have to lie are going to face a bigger impact than what we would have had if we didn't have anybody lying, right? And I think those people, they do a good job, both OO and CO, of those people are the most vulnerable, and we should care about them most in the debate. You guys never told me why we should care about these politicians most in the debate, why we should care about this legal system, or why even we'll have better interpersonal relations, and why we should care about them. So I think in the end, it left us with no decisions to go with our call. I hope that clears everything up. Any questions from anybody, please feel free to see me afterwards in 24's begin.
Thank you very much for that. Good feedback. Thank you all very much for coming and for our speakers here. Now, I invite you all to come and join us at our group reception at 24 North Daily Club, and I call this meeting to a close. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, just like many debates in the United States, the adjudicator gives the longest speech of the round.
Yeah.
At the end.
No oral critiques.
There we go.
That's what we say in the U.S.
We sum it up, just in case anyone missed the final rankings. It was the closing opposition from Durham receiving the 1, opening opposition being represented by Lee College and University of Central Missouri receiving the 2, the closing government being represented by Louisiana State University Shreveport receiving the 3, and then opening government representing Durham again receiving the 4. So Jack, simple math.
Yeah,
it's a tie.
Yeah, the way that they do points at an Ivy in Britain is the first gets 4 points, the second gets 3. So if you have the middle and they have the ends, they have 4 points and 1 point, which is 5. 2 and 3 is 5, so it's a 5-5 tie. So.
And there's a reason why I'm sitting next to the man, the myth, the legend, Jack Stradamus over here.
Whatever.
He was able to predict the final rankings here. I received a text from members of the UCM team in the back. They also made the same prediction as far as the rankings. So even though it did seem to be a pretty close debate that went back and forth, and one could kind of squabble a little bit about some of the placings, it was a pretty clear and even they said a unanimous decision. So,
right.
So that's always good to hear whenever there's a unanimous decision, that there's no one individual who's making the ultimate final decision. Like we've maybe experienced in the past. So Jack, any closing thoughts before we
just want to thank Durham and Josh and all the folks here that have worked so hard and so tirelessly to set this up for us so that we have this wonderful experience. We got in 3 debates today, a couple of sparring matches, and then this one tonight. I think all of our kids have learned a great deal, and that's the bottom line, is that they learn how to engage debate in a little bit different way. And we hope that they take that home and then use that in the U.S. to develop humor, to develop a little bit more rhetorical style. It just broadens their understanding of debate throughout the world. And, of course, there's the tremendous cultural aspect of learning the history and, engaging with the culture. So just want to thank Durham. They did a wonderful, amazing job. One of the warmest receptions we've experienced in quite some time.
Absolutely. So thank you again to the Durham Union here at Durham University for being wonderful hosts and fun debaters. It was a good time.
Fun.
Yeah, it was fun to
time.
listen to. It was a good time. Thanks to you for watching at home, and we are going to take a couple of days here in Durham, and then we're going to be off to London starting on Monday morning. But we want you all to tune in again on Wednesday around 1:30-ish Central Standard Time in the States for our final debate, where we will be up against Imperial University directly from London. So for Dr. Jack Rogers, I'm Jordan Compton. We will see you all on Wednesday.
That's a wrap.